Hawu! So, may nakita akong Twitter thread about like overhyped books. As marami dun sa books like I enjoyed and I read. So I thought, hey, why not? Let's talk about the books that I've read this year so far. Kasi I set a goal for myself that I'd read 50 books this year. Kasi I managed to do that last year. I am an overly ambitious person and I did not predict my mental state for this year, which was very bad. So I just pulled it down, the goal to 20, and so far I've read 16 books. Pero before I give my thoughts on those 16 books, pakita ko lang for accountability's sake yung binabasa ko ngayon. So, technically, marami akong binabasa ngayon, pero like, I just hold them off kasi I'm not mentally in the right space to read those books, or parang wala lang ako sa mood, or I feel like I need to live my life a bit more to find the soul or something to connect to the book, or like kailangan ko muna pahiram sa ibang tao para it feels like it's lived in. Doesn't make sense, but it makes sense to me. So like, I'm reading 4 books like just for technically, as in like consistently ko binabasa. So it's Heaven, The Lying Life of Adults. No, baby, don't do that to the book. My Brilliant Friend, and A Tale for the Time Being. So the reason, okay, let's go through rather than going through my thoughts about these books, let's go through why I'm taking so long to finish it. This one, it talks about suicide. And as much as I love one of our narrators' voice, because I relate to it a lot, sometimes I'm just not in the right spot, in the right headspace to go, she wants to kill herself. And also kasi ang laki ng libro, so like ang uncomfortable hawakan in public, pati like hindi siya kasha madalas sa bag ko, so ayun. You wanna introduce the next book? Kasi it's My Brilliant Friend by Elena Ferrante. So I loved the 4th book, the last book sa series, and I know na people like called the first book like a 3-star read, but the series in itself like a 5-star read, and I understand that. I'm like 2/3 done na with this book, pero hindi ko matapos kasi like it's just like it's just giving me the descriptions, like the same energy of like just reading descriptions of the characters, in the sense na hindi naman siya ganun ka-boring na writing style. Like it still has all the charm that I love with Elena Ferrante. It just doesn't have the energy and the soul that I'm looking for, and that's basically kasi they're still young in this book. They don't have enough trauma or like baggage. Like sure, it tackles heavy things, heavy violent things as well that they've witnessed, pero kasi yung level of friendship between our main characters, Lila and Elena, it's still not on the level of toxicity and complexity that I really enjoyed dun sa last book. So ayun. It's just always interesting though, I have to say, the writing style, kasi it's clear that all the books are narrated by Elena. Like it sounds like the same person, but it sounds like a different age of the person, and natutuwa ako dun kasi like the way that they write is different, but you could clearly hear the same voice pa rin. Nakakatuwa, pero hindi ko matapos-tapos. Next is The Fair. Kakabili ko lang nito, and it's The Lying Life of Adults. Honestly, I don't know what it's about. I just bought it kasi it called to me, and it's Elena Ferrante, and I love her. And okay, I saw the back page, and apparently this is the first line. 2 years before leaving home, my father said to my mother that I was very ugly. And we love familial issues and insecurities and body body dysmorphia, so I picked it up and I like it. Like, I really do like it as far as I've read, and I've seen like the last few pages, and it involves very awkward sex. So, you know, I can tell that this is about like growing up, coming of age, girlhood, womanhood, that shit. So, the reason why it's taking me so long to read this is because I'm reading other stuff, and I always feel like I have to finish it now. And then lastly is my most recent read, Heaven. It's so heavy. Like, it really did put me into a bad place mentally kasi sobrang graphic, and it puts you into an even worse place kasi, okay, reading about graphic violence and bullying just puts you in a bad place na, and it puts you even more of a bad place mentally, knowing that you can't do anything but just sit. Like, you can't even be a preachy bitch about it kasi no, you just can't. And it puts me into an even more bad place kasi the trauma bond between like the two main characters, I don't know why, like my brain is just romanticizing it, and I feel like a shitty person for romanticizing something like that. Pero kasi when he looks at her like she's sunshine. Pero you know, I'm actually reading this faster than I expected. Like, nasa page 50 something na ako, and I was honestly expecting it would take me like 1 page per day. So that's good for me. So ayun po yung mga binabasa ko currently ngayon. Now let's go to the books that I've read for this year so far. Starting with the first book that I finished this year, which is All Your Perfects by Colleen Hoover. This is a reread, and this is the physical book. Iba yung cover niya, and it involves two half-naked people momoling, and I don't feel comfortable holding a book with that, so I repainted the cover. It's a Category 5 Storm. If you get it, you get it. It's a 5-star read for me kasi I understand the criticisms hurled against Colleen Hoover, and honestly I agree with them, especially about her. Like, honestly, I don't feel comfortable criticizing people on their writing styles kasi, you know, that's your voice. Pero yun nga, like, if we're gonna say Colleen Hoover's like such an amazing writer, she writes so beautiful prose, you're lying. She doesn't write beautiful prose, but what she does do well is write things that emotionally resonate with people. Like, as much as I don't really like how she writes, it just connects with me so much na umiiyak pa rin ako, and I can't stop eating her work. And another criticism that I do agree so much against her is how she's constantly writing about like unhealthy and very, very, very harmful men, and it's all painted in a romanticized light. Like, people will argue dun sa It Ends With Us na parang she's showing na it's an abusive relationship, and it's like clearly portraying that this is bad. Pero like her other books, they're also romanticized. Are we gonna forget about November 9? About the guy who literally burned her house down, literally gave her third-degree burns and mutilated, disfigured her. Tapos we're just gonna romanticize him without any like criticisms against him. Are we seriously gonna do that? And that's something that she constantly has for all her books. Like, no, it's like something that she deserves to be criticized about. But beyond like those criticisms, I really did love this book so much. Like, she had so much to say about it, honestly. Like, I forgot the system I had for the colors. That's why I don't do this anymore kasi it's too complicated for my tiny brain. And I don't like na may nakalala dito. Pero, I emotionally resonated so much to our main character It's very clear that this is a case of an unreliable narrator, and I eat that up because it just feels like ultimate betrayal, realizing that, hey, maybe it's really not that way, and it's also like um, a reminder for me na maybe I'm like personally I'm over exaggerating things, and it's not as bad as I feel like it is, kasi this is how it is in my perspective, but in other people's perspective, it's not a big deal, bestie. Though one thing I really hated about this book is the whole spoiler, pero the infidelity thing, kasi it just feels so out of place and out of nowhere, and also considering how much our main character overthinks, and how like there was no mention or like no inkling that she was thinking or feeling that way, or feeling insecure or jealous about her partner and the people that are close to him. Yet they somehow managed sa gitna i-insert yun for like a sense of conflict. No thanks. Though a very interesting point that I got from this book was how the word perfect was used, and how beyond the whole like fortune cookie scene, the word perfect is only used by our main character and her mom. So like the moment I realized it, bandang dulo lang, and I feel like ayun nga, as much as our main character doesn't like tries to push herself away from her mom, she's still very much affected by how she grew up, like from the whole privileged aspect. She's still very much that girl, and it affects like the whole perfectionism that her mom wanted. Like as much as our main character tries to run away from that and tries not to like be that girl, she is still that girl. You know, so that's all your perfects. And like I had so much thoughts. Grabe, it took me 6 minutes ng pagdadada. The next book is asan na siya? Which is The White Book by Han Kang, which I printed kasi I just knew I was gonna write so much about it. It's one of those books. It's a 5 read. 5 star. Was it a 5? It's a 4 star. Why is it a 4 star? I think it was a 4 star because I couldn't fully comprehend it. Pero, ayun nga, it's one of those things na I can't really talk about it because it's truly an experience. It's very short, like literally short. And it basically feels like white. Like not like white in the whole empty, yet also open to new possibilities. Like it's both white and empty and pure in the hopeful sense, in the fearful sense na parang you're so anxious na it's so white, it's so untainted, it's so empty, that what happens then the moment it gets dirty? It feels very white. Basically, it's a memoir following like books. Basically, it's a memoir, and constantly ginagamit like white objects that was present in our narrator's life, and basically exploring these white objects, exploring the grief our narrator has over the death of their sister who died stillbirth. It's very poetic actually with the writing. It's so beautiful. I loved it. It leaves you feeling very white, as I said again and again. Very white and empty. Yeah, so much in awe. Like I loved it. I loved it. I loved it. My favorite one, I think Char, I won't say my favorite one. Wala na. Next, I suck. Next is Letters to a Young Poet by Rilke. So, one of my favorite booktubers is Emma, and she keeps talking about this book, so I bought it as well. Basically, it's just a small, like one of those small, yung black penguin na books. Pero kasi may pusa sa lap ko, so hindi ko na maaabot yung libro. Pero, ayun, like it's, oh, never mind, it's here. It's this small. And basically, it's about this young poet, literal. It's about this young poet sending letters seeking for advice from Rilke, and it's just their correspondences. And I really enjoyed it. Like, as you can see, it has a lot of highlighted parts. And it came to me at a time that I really needed it. Basically, it's just, advice. Advice. And about art, beauty, solitude. Yeah. I recommend reading it. There was this one thing. Yeah, basically, it just came to me at the right time. So I really did appreciate it. A 5-star read for me. Next is The Lost. Oh my gosh! Nakakahiya. Pakita yung copy ko. Pero this is The Lost Hero. See, the thing is, if you're unaware, I'm attached to this series to the point na I refuse to read the last 2 books kasi reading it means I'm ending the journey, and I don't want to end the journey with my friends that I made when I didn't have friends. So, ayun nga, I made a promise to myself that I'm gonna read Heroes of Olympus, as in tatapusin ko na talaga. So, tinapos ko The Lost Hero. For context, I love Leo Valdez. Siya talaga yung crush ko ever since bata ako. Besides Seiji Amasawa, silang dalawa, pati si Edmund Pevensie. Silang tatlo. And I loved him so much na, like, puro hearts yung sa cover na, I don't know how, pero na-rip off yung cover mismo nung, like, bata ako. So my thoughts, it really cemented my taste when I read this book na I'm not a fan of fantasy, not a fan of YA. I'm on YA, but I'm not a fan of fantasy. Like, contrary to popular belief, kasi some people assume I'm into fantasy. I'm not. Like, the whole adventure thing is not for me. I'm more drawn to character-driven stories, as well as just about life, like just slice of life. You don't need to take me to a different world and explain very complicated systems of world building to me, because my little brain cannot handle that, and it feels like I try to overthink everything na to the point na parang I can't process anything else. So ayun, I did not enjoy this as much as I wanted to. That's why hindi ko masimulan Son of Neptune, the next book, kasi I'm pretty sure I'm not gonna enjoy it as well, kasi the only saving grace for this book was Leo Valdez, and that's because I'm in love with him. But besides that, I just, like, honestly, it was a bad move, Ren. Like, sure, I love the even more diversity and the more story that we're exploring with Heroes of Olympus, pero honestly, marketing-wise, it was such a not the best decision to go from, like, Percy Jackson, where it's like a first-person point of view, and it has such a distinct voice, such a distinct snarky voice. Tapos biglang the follow-up series is multi-perspective, written in third-person point of view. And it starts off with the character boring and stale as Jason Grace. Just that wasn't the right move. You could have started with Leo, you know, if you really wanted to push the whole like we have to keep the multi-perspective, third-person point of view, not start with Percy type of thing. You could have started with Leo to keep like the tone, pero you know, sure. And honestly, I hated how Rick wrote Piper because I know I would have related to her so much, and I wanted just. But she was just so much of a pick-me girl. It was annoying. I actually did not enjoy this as much. The only saving grace, Leo Valdez. I love him to the stars and back. I'm not a big fan of fantasy, and it makes me sad because I was so excited to finally finish the series, and I don't think I'll ever be able to finish it at this rate. Next, Someone Who Will Love You in All Your Damaged Glory. I don't have the copy kasi pinahiram ko, and it's a 4.5 read. It's a collection of short stories exploring love. It's written by the same creator as BoJack Horseman, so it has the same absurdist, mentally ill tone. My thoughts, I'll read my review. Very Reddit thread vibes in a genuine, emotionally raw way. Personally, did not love all the stories, cuff those in the perspective of men, but overall this book is a nice experience, and I agree. This book is a nice experience, and it came to me at the right time. And honestly, like, if you're heartbroken and you feel like no one will ever love you ever again, technically the book isn't necessarily advice or like a happy-go-lucky type of thing that you would come out of it thinking na, oh, this is what I'm gonna do. It's more of like a comforting thing na hindi ka nag-iisa, na yeah, it's inevitable. Like when you love someone so much and you just, you know, let your heart go up there. Kapag binatawan yun, masisira rin yun. And there's so many different ways for your heart to be broken, but that doesn't make you any less worthy of love. And it's just a comforting book na parang, ayun na, hindi ka nag-iisa. Pero as I mentioned, it's a collection of short stories. It's very absurd. Like, some of them are so absurd. Others are very annoying, meaning the ones written in the perspective of men. Like, I really hated We Men of Science. I fucking hated it. It put me into a slump, a reading slump. Like, I hated reading after that. And there were other short stories that I wasn't a big fan of, specifically those that tried to follow a plot. Kasi the other short stories in the collection follow a more experimental type of thing, to the point, experimental in the Tumblr sense. Like, alam mo yung mga parang, a story in 6 words. Or like, questions to ask your lover type of things, formats. It has a lot of that. My favorite ones, I'm trying to remember. One of my favorite ones was like Move Across the Country, if I remember correctly. It's basically about you trying to run away from sadness, and even if you try to move away and you rebuild something good for yourself, sadness will always be there. Because you just can't run away from it. It will always be there, and your choice is whether you'll continuously move again and again and again and again and run away from it, or just, you know, learn to live with it. Another one of my favorite is the opening story. It's just 2 pages, and it's very interesting in its format kasi the font starts like from really big to really small, and it depicts like a first date na like parang your date is asking you, hey, do you want to open this like can of peanuts? And thus it's one of those like prank things that you know it's gonna pop open, pero at the same time, like, you're not sure, it just might just really just be a can of peanuts. Pero with all the baggage and anxiety that you have from your past relationships, you're scared. But then, at the same time, why not just still try, even if you're scared, and even though there's like a chance for your heart to still be broken. Where's the harm in trying? You don't know. Like, sure, you might get your heart broken again, pero this time it might be worth it to fix it with this specific person. You never know. You'll only know once you dive in, and that's such a beautiful way to introduce the collection itself, and it's still stuck to me until now. Another one that I really liked was nakalimutan ko yung title, basta it's like a serial monogamist's guide to New York, and it's basically a travelogue format following New York and how every single corner has a memory to it. The way that it was written was very beautiful. I really loved it. And I'm a fan of... Would I say I'm a fan of travelogues? Not really. Pero it gives Cornelia Street vibes. And the last one that I really loved was... nakalimutan ko yung title. I think it's The Average of All Possible Things. Basta it has average in the title. And it follows our narrator, Lucy. And she's basically asserting again and again and again for the first few pages that she's average, she's just normal. Like, there's nothing special to her, she follows a routine. And later on, you find out that parang she just broke up with her boss. And the reason why she's continuously reminding all of us that she's average is because she's trying to convince herself that, there's just really nothing special about me. That's why he broke up with me. Like, there's nothing special about me enough for him to stick around. And the way that the story ended was really beautiful, and I loved it. I'm just happy. It was a really nice healing experience, minus the stories that I really did not enjoy. Next. Hanapin ko yung kopya. Next is It Ends With Us. It's a reread, and I bought the physical copy because my goal was to highlight every single part where there's a red flag. The first time I read it, I was so emotionally connecting with it. It came to me at the time where I was in an abusive relationship, and it just put so much things into context for me na parang, yeah, this is why you're still sticking around, bitch. Like, it's not because you love him, it's because you think it won't get worse. Like, this is the best that you'll ever get. So, rereading it was such a dull experience. Like, it's so unbearably badly written. And I really hate the parts where, it's letters to Ellen, the generous. And they're so long. It's so fucking annoying to read those. And a large part of what I hate about this book is how it's marketed and how it's like perceived by the general public. It's perceived as a fucking romance. This is not a romantic story. Like, would I even say it's a love story? No, it's a story about a woman that's in an abusive relationship. A very abusive relationship. And it just frustrates me how it's always pandered as like a romance. Because it's not. It's really not. It's so not a romance. And I hate how like a lot of people focus on Lily and Atlas's relationship. Like, putang ina nyo. Like, I don't need to hear the whole, if you ever find it in yourself to fall in love again, please fall in love with me. Like, it's so off-putting. And people could argue na parang, it's not Colleen Hoover's fault that it's perceived that way. Na parang people perceive it as a romance between those two. Like, people are more focused on that aspect as opposed to what the huge chunk of this book is, which is exploring that abusive relationship and domestic abuse. like people could argue na parang, oh, Colleen Hoover wasn't like pandering no to that wasn't her intention. Like she's depicting a relationship between that she herself witnessed. Eddie, why did she write a prequel focusing on Lily and Atlas's relationship? Why? Why? And I hate how it feels like towards the end it's like him, parang the way Atlas is portrayed as a foil to Lily's abusive partner Ryle, and it feels like he's like his existence is what saves Lily, which is just not true. She saved herself. It's so annoying. And plus, are we gonna forget that he literally waited for her to turn of consenting age for them to finally have sex? Anyway, I hated it. Worst experience. Don't recommend. So many red flags. Next, so with all those books, I was put into a really bad reading slump. So the next book that put me out of my slump is How to Be the Best Third Wheel. I found it while I was looking for books sa One Live. And I don't know, it just called to me. It just called to me. Honestly, I forgot what this was about. Pero it's very Wattpad in a fun sense. I'm pretty sure this is Jadine fanfiction. Because it's like an rivals to reluctant friends to lovers. Because they're both like third wheels in their own friend groups, as they're both nerds. It's very easy and it made me cry at some parts, and man, I'm pretty sure this was a Jadine fanfic. It's very light read, though there was like just one cringy part kasi ayun nga, they're like Phil-Ams. And the guy is like, okay, the girl's family is like Filipinos and like immigrants to America. The guy's family, he's a Phil-Am, so his dad's American. There was like this one part that you could literally hear because he was like struggling with Tagalog because he was trying to talk to her in Tagalog. It's parang, boy, stop, I can hear James Reid's voice. Okay, next. Oh my god, 30 minutes. Next is Book Lovers by Emily Henry. I love Emily Henry, the way she writes. And I was honestly not expecting much though, because I did not enjoy People We Meet on Vacation. I loved and I adore Beach Read. It's amazing. It's amazing as a book. It's everything that I'm looking for. Like an unreliable narrator, just tired with life. Yeah, and books, and books, and writing. And I don't know, I just really connected with the main characters of Beach Read because she used to be like a fairy princess, hopeless romantic, and that's like me, and now she's like disillusioned and tired with life and romance. So you know, that was like very enjoyable to read. But then People We Meet on Vacation, I thought I was gonna love it, but I didn't, and I understand why, because it more panders to the rom-com genre itself, and it doesn't have the same elements that I was in love with sa Beach Read, the whole family dynamics that Emily Henry writes so well. The main character who has so much baggage, like sure they have baggage, but it's just rom-com type of baggage, like baggage that is enough for the plot to move. Kasi as opposed to Beach Read, it's like baggage that makes these characters feel real, not because this is just like, you know, something to move the plot. Ayun. So I wasn't expecting much with Book Lovers, pero I loved it. But not as much as Beach Read, pero it has the same qualities that I was in love with some Beach Read. The highlight part was the relationship between our main character and her sister. Like, as I said, Emily Henry writes relationships so well. This book gives the same vibes as Alone Together in the sense of it features a woman do who does her job so well. She knows what she wants, she does what she wants, she gets what she wants. And she goes through character development and heals herself through her issues. While our like lead guy, he's more of a sideline, flat character supporting our girl. And I don't really have qualms with that. It's out of all of them, it's the steamiest if you're looking for that. Pero yun, I really adored how it explored relationships, and honestly, I felt it when I was reading it. Don't want to spoil, but there are parts na parang you really do feel choked up and you want to cry. And I adore our main character and how much love and dedication she has in her work. Like, people categorize her and label her as like a shark and a cold bitch because she's like very passionate about her work, but like, honestly, she's not cold, she's just very nitpicky. She's just very nitpicky, and she fights for her clients, you know. I love her. I love this book. It's very nice, honestly. Next, Circe. I listened to it as an audiobook, and I was barely paying attention. Next, Mr. Wrong Number by Lynn Painter. Before I go with that, let's talk about the book that I've been constantly reading again and again because it's my favorite, and that's what's the title? Fuck, I forgot the title. Let me check. Wait long. This is so embarrassing. Better Than the Movies by Lynn Painter. It's my absolute favorite book. It's my comfort read. Every time I'm depressed and I feel sad and down, I just read it. And I've read it like around 10 times this year. And I'm not ashamed to admit it because it's an amazing book. If you are a rom-com lover, you will love this book so much. It's just happy and cute and sweet, and honestly, it's refreshing for me because when I first read it last year, I read Today, Tonight, Tomorrow, and it also depicts like high schoolers, but it ended up having like a very graphic sex scene at the end, which made me uncomfortable. And what I loved about this book is just it feels like high school talaga, without those uncomfortable scenes written by an adult. It has the elements of what I love in a book: rom-com, the cheesiness, an unreliable narrator, a narrator who has baggage and she's trying to heal, and I have a type. He gives off Leo Valdez energy and Seiji Amasawa energy. The whole annoyingly cute, that you want to shut them up with a wall. Yeah, annoyingly cute puppy energy. But the moment na halatang you're not okay, they turn. And they don't like, they're not annoying in the they're gonna hurt you sense. It's just like have fun. But the moment that they know that you're hurt or you're sad, they turn into dog energy, and I love it. I love this book. It's my favorite. I love it so much. And it's not annoying in its depictions. I just love it. And I'm obsessed with the scene where they were watching a movie. I was like, I loved it. Anyway, so the book talaga na I read this year was Mr. Wrong Number by Lynn Painter. And I was surprised because it was like a lot steamier than I expected from the author, because it was so wholesome, so better than the movies, which by the way references a lot of like rom-coms, so like that's still fun to read, honestly. Pero I know Mr. Wrong Number, I didn't leave a review. I don't really remember much of it besides like how shocked I was by how much sex and horniness was in it. It wasn't bad. It involves best friend's, my brother's best friend, forced proximity type of tropes. I don't remember anything else. I'm so sorry. Normal People by Sally Rooney. So, I tried reading it prior to watching the show. Tapos I failed kasi nahirapan talaga ako dun sa lack of quotation marks. And honestly, rather than it just being like a simple dialogue tagger type of thing, a dialogue marker type of thing, problem, it was more of it, like reading, it was hard to like materialize the characters into like real people because burp. It couldn't feel like they were caged into something. Anyway, when I watched the show, it was a lot easier to read the book, so I managed to read the book and I gave it 5 stars. Why? Because I love miscommunication and unreliable narrators. It's my favorite thing. But if you don't like that, don't read this at all. I've seen so many people hate it, and I get it. Like, it has so much miscommunication, and that's so frustrating for some people. So if you don't like that, don't read it. Because like, that's basically the entire premise of it. Like, I saw someone point out, I don't have my copy anymore, but I saw someone point out na parang the first line is basically their entire relationship. She opens the door but he doesn't enter or like talk or something like that, and that's basically their whole relationship. Like, kinakapa nila isa't isa, and they don't communicate to one another, carnal, and like they grow closer together. Pero the moment na parang his insecurity about like the disparity of their social classes or other reasons occur, that's when he pushes her away and ends up hurting her, and they end up just like the connection, the relationship, they just stray away from each other, and then they will meet up again when they're already with other people, and then they would realize that they're miserable in their current relationships, and then they would start connecting again to one another, but they would fail to communicate properly, and it's a cycle of that again and again and again and again, of miscommunication, lack of communication, even until the end of the story, that you can't even say that there's closure to anything. So yeah, though I have to admit that there are some parts where the writing was kind of like, this is not verbatim, pero there are parts na parang he was sad, and you can tell by the sigh that he is exhaling and the look in his eyes, like, okay gets halata, okay gets. Next, My Mechanical Romance. I saw it on TikTok and I was waiting for it, and I saw it. It's about 2 nerds that are like rivals to each other. I give it a 3-star. I forgot what it's about specifically, but so they're like STEM and robotics. Okay, I remember. He's like if I had to compare to anything, it's like Itsasura no Kiss. Yeah, in the way na parang he's like Naoki. He's like Iria-kun. He's like him. Like the perfect guy who's like the best of the best, very cold. And then the girl that's like, except she's not. She's very smart and very creative, and she ends up getting into the robotics team where he's the president of, and he's like so type A about everything. Ayan. Sometimes it's like weird, like it doesn't, like parang there are parts of the, like, wala, it feels like it's just a mosaic in a sense, so parang may parts na parang the energy is kind of different. So ayan. The next book I read was Of Love and Other Lemons by Caterina Stewart Santiago, and I got it because of TikTok, and I loved it. Basically, it's about women and womanhood and love and the Filipino experience. I have to admit na it does feel like a product of its time since it's written like around 2012. So there are some points that I'm like, bestie, but there are so much love I have for it. It's like the ate I never had, and the way that it's written is like very beautiful. Like the only like the thing that I'm so about is like some of the takes on feminism, and I wish some parts were like it was curated in a different way. Na parang some parts mas nauna, like how it's written in a way kasi na parang if you're not critical enough, you could take her word for it. Pero, ayun nga, bandang dulo niya lang linagay yung, I don't wanna call myself a feminist because I don't feel like I'm a feminist enough. Na I know I'm very much of stuck in the academe. Na compared to other women who are actively fighting in the streets for their rights and much more connected and grounded to the issues and struggles that women face here in the Philippines, and she feels very disconnected from it kasi it's not her experience. I wish that was placed bandang simula pa lang so that you get like an understanding of where the author is coming from and why is like their perspective in life like this. Kasi ayun nga, if you're not critical enough while you're reading it, parang it's easy to take her word for some things without questioning the perspective that it's coming from, without really understanding that, hey, it's coming from us, like, that kind of, like, feminism. Like, minsan it starts to feel like lib fem for me, which is annoying, pero, ayun nga, just takes a critical perspective, and I wish, yun nga, dinagay sa bandang simula yung piece about her feminism and how she's not comfortable about calling herself a feminist. Next is Dash and Lily's Book of Theirs. If you have been here enough, you know I'm obsessed with Dash and Lily, the show on Netflix. It's everything I love. It's sunshine and grumpy, pen pals, writing, Christmas. I just love it. But I hated the fucking book. It was boring, it was annoying, it was very pretentious. Diba sa show, like, they depict Dash, the guy, as a very pretentious guy, and it's annoying, but it's bearable naman, the way it's depicted. The way it's written in the book is even more annoying, and I couldn't even go past that. So now let's introduce the most recent book that I've read, which is The Story of the Lost Child by Elena Ferrante. And I've spoken about it so much, how much I loved it. Pero, ayun, it gives off the same vibes as Reply 1988, and honestly, the entire Reply franchise in general, but mostly Reply 1988, in the sense of how it's connecting the personal troubles with public issues, so the personal experiences of our group of characters and how it interrelates with Italy at the state of Italy during the 1950s to 1990s. Loved it so much. This book specifically enters from girlhood to womanhood and exploring our characters finally having children. It's one of those books that made me think na parang, oh, I love my besties right now, pero how would we be as parents? Like, what if hindi ko vibe yung parenting style nila? Would that make me not want to be friends with them anymore? Like, the same way na parang it made some of our characters uncomfortable. You know. Basta I loved it. It's one of my favorite books so far. And I've talked so much, magiging isang oras na pagdadada ko dito. Titigil na po ako.